I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media, and today on the Crypto Coin Show, we have back with us Kadan Stadelmann, the CTO of Komodo. Kadan, welcome back to the show. It is great to see you again.
Hey Ashton, I'm glad to be here and thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. It's been, we've had Komodo on a few times, and since the last episode, a lot has happened. I think it was, in 2021 in the last run, and a lot happened throughout 2022. I'm curious on how Komodo fared through the, short bear market, and hopefully we're moving back into a bull market and all these updates that the Komodo team has been working on. But to start us off, for those who aren't familiar, maybe you can give a high level on exactly what Komodo is doing in the space, and then we'll dive into all those details.
Sure, absolutely. So Komodo, or like the Komodo platform, we are an open source organization that's focused on, various blockchain utility tools and technologies. And our core focus is on the interoperability stack to basically interconnect different blockchain protocols with each other and make them natively compatible with each other, right? Like that's kind of like one of our main focuses. But I mean, we do really build tech. We do have like end user application in the sense of like a wallet DEX, right? So we try to provide like solid tech for not just financial liberty, but like liberty in general. That's kind of like the Komodo platform ideology and what we really like doing and focusing on.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's a huge importance moving forward is as the all of the blockchains continue to grow, and right now we're seeing it the most in the DeFi sector, having that interoperability so that we don't have all these isolated silos, and even more so, trying to move assets from one blockchain to another. There's been a lot of security risks, and it just hasn't been a very good system to be able to transfer value through these in a decentralized way right now. So I feel like that's very important for this technology as we continue to grow.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's crucial, right? Like, because we've been kind of like diluting, the entire ecosystem into like a lot of like sub layers and substacks. And I mean, we have like multiple projects essentially doing the same thing, but they're not interconnected. There's no interoperability. People just don't know, right, to a certain degree. And I think, yes, like providing this like core interoperability is going to unify this actual like blockchain ecosystem industry. And that's what we essentially lacking, right? Like a couple hundred years ago, we have like many banks with different protocols using very different like standards. Everyone had his own standard, but over the decades and centuries, they kind of like unify. They're using like standardized, transaction and transferal channels and mediums as well as like formats. And I do see this also happening with the blockchain, over the long-term phase. And I hope that we'll be able to do some valuable contributions to this.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And I know we haven't spoken almost a year, and so much happened in the crypto industry, almost too much, and a lot of security issues as well, which I know that you know a lot about that, being the CTO on the centralized side and on the decentralized side as well. Can you talk about 2022 for Komodo, and as the Bitcoin price in the market was going down, how the Komodo platform fared in terms of sustainability and the growth and just building for the future?
Yes, I mean, those who know us know we've been like a quite well-managed and sustainable project in terms of like project funding, well-strategized hedging strategies and so on. So we've managed to get kind of like through this. To me, it felt like a full cycle, to be honest, 2021 through 2022, and now like a full cycle. And I mean, last year, without getting like too deep into it, I mean, the industry was like hit hard, and to me it seems, like if we kind of like retrospectively analyze what happened, we'll understand, well, trust happened. Like users in the industry and the ecosystem, like we basically used like an element like this factor trust that isn't compatible with crypto and actually defeats the whole purpose of crypto. And to me, it was super sad, and I don't want to say it was expected, but I wasn't too surprised when it happened, because I understand if you look at like human history, this is like what happens throughout like the human history when it affects like the monetary basis. If we look at banks, all the bailouts, I mean, just look at the two, 3 generations, 20, 30 years, and we realize, oh, it's bad. And in regards to like security, I mean, we see now that it's, more important than ever, like to heavily focus on security and also to remain vigilant and aware that, look, just because CeFi has messed it totally up and people now kind of like hyping the DeFi stack, DeFi doesn't equal DeFi, and decentralized or like non-custodial doesn't equal secure. 90% of the most popular wallets out there are not open source. They're closed source. They use heavily centralized stacks. And it might be the case that you're actually owning your seed and that the private key is in your possession and not controlled by the wallet provider. But yet, could it pose risk, security vulnerabilities, upstream attacks, big, huge privacy concerns in terms of what data is being analyzed by these like service providers? So what I want to say is, like, in this regard, we need to remain aware from an end user perspective, from an ecosystem and industry perspective. We need like to kind of enhance this space and remove this trust factor once for all. We should have all wallets fully open sourced with independent reviews, right? Like that's things to me. That's just a logical, assumption or requirement for the industry to truly flourish, right? I hope this answers kind of like the question here.
Yeah, no, that's a great explanation. And to recap from what I understand and what we saw in 2022, a lot of these centralized providers, whether it was yield generation platform like Celsius or an exchange like FTX, you put your funds in the hands of other people to manage it, and often it gets mismanaged and you lose it. And we're seeing a big trend after that now moving to decentralized exchanges, which have been on the rise for years, but it seems like this is a major catalyst for that. And non-custodial wallets, where you have a wallet and you have the private key, and the centralized party or whoever created the wallet doesn't have access to that key. And I know what you're saying here is that doesn't just mean that it's 100% secure just because it's non-custodial. What are the ways that you and the team at Komodo are developing a wallet or an exchange that ensures that, it's non-custodial, but also it's not too confusing and everyday crypto people can use it, understanding all of those other risks that a lot more about than them on how to keep their funds safe while storing coins and trading them?
So I think there's like multiple factors to look at, and I think there's always like kind of like 2 main layers when it comes like to wallet security. There is one aspect, right? And when I speak about wallet security, to me that's kind of like this like umbrella term for like what can we do like to keep things as secure as possible. So perspective one is like me as a software service provider or as a wallet provider, what can I do, right? Like what do we at Komodo do? So we open source our entire like technology stack, as well as like the underlying core basis for like the wallet, key management, and all these things that touch like on top and built on top of the cryptographic like stack. So that's like for one. The second item is just open sourcing. It isn't enough, right? It needs to be validated. So we do have external third-party and independent security assessments, and we do this regularly, at least like once a year in a really like extensive and comprehensive like scope. And we do this, but in addition, as an ongoing kind of like effort. So security is not a step. It's not like one event. It's like a process. That's also like very important to notice. So you need to remain on top of it 24/7, literally. If you're a wallet provider, you need pen tests on a weekly basis. You need the team, to challenge this technology if you have a core tech team, and so on. And that's all things we do. What I can state, as a CTO of Komodo, is that I have read every single code line of our like atomic DEX core, and I'm not the only one who have done that. We have like multiple parties within our team that have executed this, but also external like expert security firms that do nothing else to make sure we're aligned and it's not just our understanding that it's secure. And we continue to do this. And I believe that should be something that every wallet provider should do and fully like transparent. The second aspect is the user perspective, the user side of things. What can I as a user do? What can we tell the user to do? Because that's another like, layer that's not necessarily, related to the tech. So a user could lose his funds and just get wrecked here, sorry for my wording, like by not following best practices, getting tricked into something, etc., etc. So I think that's also something where we as wallet providers can do something great. And I believe it shouldn't be something like ERC 433.7, just like, one input here, because that's, again, it's something that might enhance usability enormously, this account abstraction. But at the same time, I see a lot of industry players trying to kind of implement the factor trust into like this industry. And I think that's like an issue here. And we at Komodo will continue to like challenge others to open source their tech. We'll continue like to challenge others like to take security more serious. And what we can do, like moving forward is being an example in how you should like do it. And yeah, this is really the only layer we don't make any compromise with. That's a layer we're like super, super strict with. And I think that's the best thing you can do. Always assume you're already infiltrated, you're already hacked, you already have hacker in your software development firm, in your devs computers. Assume you are already done. And this level of paranoia will additionally like push you to just like take care.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for explaining that, because I feel like with wallets, there's when you see these wallets on the App Store, for example, they're normally advertising, okay, it's a decentralized wallet or non-custodial, but not a lot of people, at least users, especially people that are just getting into crypto, think about, well, is it open source or not? It seems like they don't seem like that's important. And I feel like, as a developer, you understand more the difference between open source and non-open source. And people that aren't coders, they don't really think about that. They understand, non-custodial, so I have the key. But on the open source side, I feel like they don't understand the risks of closed source, so to say, a wallet. And I feel like maybe you can elaborate on that, but from what I understand, there could be backdoor code that the team has in there, or you don't really know, what the code is if they actually say that it's non-custodial, but the code allows them to get your keys or other vulnerabilities like that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I should probably clarify, I don't want to say that proprietary or kind of like closed source wallets couldn't be, potentially secure or safe, but I just want to say that there would be no way in truly validating it, and it would be like based 100% on trust. And we've seen where trust has brought us before, so we have to ask ourselves, is this like a compromise I'm willing like to go into, and like, is this the trade-off, the price I'm willing to pay? To me, it's a clear no, right? Like, and like, again, I believe, open sourcing is just like one step towards it, and it's the only way to enable the industry to evaluate and assess the technology and really like make sure it is indeed secure, but trustless, without the requirement for trust. And I believe there are a lot of projects that are doing this and doing it great. There's a lot of like core basis, foundational technology stacks, right? Linux kernel, etc., Android, and so on. This is all like open source technology on 100% level. And that shows us that this indeed like helps with mainstream adoption, etc., etc.
Yeah, great point about the mainstream adoption, because I feel like there's a balance on your side, making sure there's the highest security, and as you put it, having paranoia that the hackers are already infiltrated. But on the end user side, or for grandma, she's getting a wallet and has a little bit of funds. She doesn't want to feel paranoid, and she doesn't want to become a developer, right? She wants it to have a user experience that's like very easy hand-holding to understand. Yeah, it's open source, and I understand that means that it's been tested, but where do you and your team balance that, having that strict security, but also having a user interface that's very simple, and it's already a lot for grandma to write her words down and make sure she doesn't lose them on a piece of paper or however she does it, but making sure they don't have to take too many other steps to lower the barriers for entry, for adoption, for more mainstream people to use these types of wallets that are secure.
Sure. That's a really great point, and I want to start it off by saying that like the nowadays kind of like standards. For example, this mnemonic seed phrase, this like 12 or 24 word phrase. that's a standard, and if I'm not mistaken, it's like 10 years old when it was like initially proposed and set up. Same with how kind of like this hierarchical deterministic wallets for kind of like multi-account, multi-address wallets, how they work. These are all standards, algorithms, tech stacks. They're almost as old as Bitcoin itself, right? Like, so I believe that we as an industry, core developers, we've had plenty of time, and the best thing we could come up with is finding a few trustees. You transfer kind of like the custody over and basically start trusting them. I believe that's a bad idea, and I believe we as an industry have to solve this problem. It remains unsolved as of now, and I do agree that usability is a problem. What we, for example, at Komodo are trying to do right now, this is a specific and explicit feature our team is like integrating, is, probably for IPFS, kind of like this decentralized kind of like storage, a lot of like NFT projects using it, and we figured we could actually have like the user seed and all the data, sensitive, critical data, but also data such as like transaction list, trading infos, etc., be stored in this decentralized storage layer and encrypted with the user password, right? So for this process, we could potentially implement something similar to a username password combination that allows a user to fetch this kind of like online data, and it would even allow you to log into your wallet from anywhere. Right, this is something our research and development team is actively working out, and that's on our roadmap for this year. So that's like one item, and I think this is trivial stuff. That's not magic. I want to like highlight and emphasize. This is nowhere something like complex, or this is just very normal basic technology utilization that's already there. Kudos to IPFS teams and to the crypto challenge winners, like for providing us technology to achieve this. But again, I believe we, or kind of organizations behind like BTC development, Blockstream, etc., we've kind of like failed a little bit here. But who knows? Maybe that's kind of like this intent, the motivation to start implement certain trust factors, right? Because that's kind of what the industry works on. That's probably what regulations would want. They would want at some point, if crypto hits mainstream, to be able to lock certain accounts it's going to be essential, right? Like law enforcement, etc., etc. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. It might be really needed, and there's use cases for this. But I myself, as a hardcore kind of like liberty, anarchy, advocate in terms of like freedom, and all these things. I think it's the wrong approach that we have taken. We should really try to enhance usability, user experience differently.
Well said, Kadan. And I want to flip over to the DEX side, because with 2022, I feel like it was a big catalyst when all these centralized providers went down, that people are looking for alternatives for DEX. And I know that Komodo has been working on the atomic DEX for, long before 2022. And you've been following the industry and the adoption of trading through decentralized exchanges. Where do you sort of see it at right now in terms of the adoption of decentralized trading and non-custodial trading, and did 2022 actually make an impact, and was it a catalyst for this? I feel like it's still very early on, and most people still prefer to trade on the centralized side.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree to your observation. I still see CeFi stack haven't really lost a significant part of the market share, etc., etc. However, there's yet kind of a small hype around decentralized solution, DeFi, non-custodial tech stacks. And that's, again, to me, it's an alert to remain vigilant, aware, and cautious, because there's going to be a lot of players just trying to abuse this. Again, they might sell something as decentralized, but at the end of the day, a lot of projects aim for semi-centralized control over your assets, because that brings power. Right? Like, you can use funds to trade, you can leverage that and create profits. And that's what, at the end of the day, a lot of projects hit the wall because of these kind of structures, rug pulls, another big issue. So as aforementioned at the beginning of this call, DeFi doesn't equal DeFi. It's really a huge issue in my eyes. I do definitely also see the CeFi space playing a big role here in terms of the problems, the issues we're facing. And to me personally, I believe, to the question where are we at, we are not there yet, unfortunately. I think there's still a huge paradigm shift missing for the mainstream user base to understand that as soon as you have a trust requirement, the purpose of this technology is defeated. It's useless. You can like pack your computer, throw it off the window, and that's it. It doesn't make sense. You know, like technically, logically, it just doesn't.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think it's going to take to, you know, for the next catalyst? If it's not, you know, FTX crashing and people losing billions of dollars, they just move to the next platform like Binance or whatever and like pretend like, oh, I'll make it back. Is it the user experience or just the speed and the cost and just a better trading experience? How can DEXs, you know, steal that spot from centralized exchanges to wanting to be the go-to place that people actually prefer? What is it going to take?
I guess probably like two main items here. For one, it's regulation. And here I'd like to highlight on good regulation. Just regulation alone won't help. We need a good regulation. CeFi space got completely like messed up. And that really goes hand in hand with the DeFi space. At the end of the day, how do we evaluate, you know, like the DeFi market with fiat and, you know, CeFi stacks? And that's how we route, you know, like this huge, like, you know, volumes and that market caps. And yeah, I think this is like really like, you know, one, yeah, of probably like, it's probably like the main aspects, you know, we don't even like probably have like to go secondary layer, but I think, yeah, I think this is hopefully like it answers it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're starting to see a lot of that in this year so far. So I'm guessing the trend will continue, and we'll see how it affects centralized exchanges and stuff. So looking forward to seeing how it plays out. And hopefully, you know, I'm sure you would agree that there's also, it doesn't completely eliminate the liberty and the freedom to choose how you want to store or trade your assets.
No, I fully agree to that, and I always like try to always like emphasize, you know, with crypto 10 years ago, I had kind of like this hope and vision and kind of like expectation. This is gonna like revolutionize our financial industry, the monetary, socioeconomic basis, not just like the way we kind of like use money and exchange value, etc., but specifically in terms of wealth distribution, a fairer distribution. Today, I realize that's not gonna happen, and the crypto industry has already been like infiltrated by the traditional financial industry. Mm-hmm. But still, and yet, we need to keep in mind and give this tech stack credit for the enhancement it still brings. Even though it's kind of like the same, sorry my wording, crap like traditional finance, just like digitally, it's enabling like permissionless access. It's enhanced the life of so many people, like people, you know, that couldn't even create a bank account. They don't have birth certificates, etc., etc. They can use this tech and they can access it. Even it doesn't necessarily mean there's a fair distribution of like money according like to maybe some communistic, you know, beliefs. I believe still that it's still like a huge like enhancement and way better than what we had before. And we need to continue enhance this, right? Both CeFi and DeFi also truly believe that the CeFi space is not going to go anywhere anytime soon. Maybe hybrid coexistence, but it came to stay. That's just like the deal here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And looking forward towards the rest of this year, hopefully Bitcoin continues to run. It looks like the trend has changed and interest in the market and continues to pick up and things like decentralized exchanges continue to grow. What is your focus, Kadan, in terms of whether it's on the DEX or on the interoperability side, on what you're working on with Komodo in the coming months and for the rest of 2023?
I mean, we've always been like, you know, biddle, right? So we're just gonna like keep building like the tech stack. We've just like released or semi-released our like roadmap update like for this year. We have like major releases rolling out. I mean, we've like kind of now like this third generation tech stack DEX, which is like web compatible. So we're focusing like heavily on, you know, interconnecting really all the key ecosystem industries like with the tech stack and making them like globally compatible, so you can like log in with MetaMask, Kepler, Phantom Wallet, etc., etc. That's kind of like our main focus. We really like kind of like keep this focus. For close to a decade, we wanted to build, and we built this like interoperability solution, and to kind of like still kind of like touch again base on the signalized bull that you've mentioned, and here like no financial advice whatsoever. This is just like, you know, an observation. To me personally, it seems we haven't kind of, you know, like sensed or felt the full impact of FTX, Luna, and all these things. To me, it seems like, or I ask myself, has it really like fully unfolded? Do we really know the full extent of this? You know, like FTX alone, I mean, yeah, again, Luna, 40 billion dollar, just like gone. And what happened there, right? Like there was no zero regulation. So I think that there might be an aftermath. So I have hope. I always like hope that, you know, we're back in like an upward trend and all these things, but I remain realistic, cautious, and I always differentiate market and technology. So to me, these are two totally independent things. The one is totally irrational, and yeah.
Yeah, I agree. You know, sometimes the market's very irrational compared to the technology, and I think we've seen that a lot since 2020. So definitely be cautious. But I know that Komodo will continue to build, and you know, 10 years, approaching 10 years is not a lot of time in terms of the internet. Even just since the internet came out in the 90s, there's still so much. And I feel like with the incorporation of AI and this machine learning, it's only going to get exponentially faster in the developments that we see. And it's very exciting because I think one of these technologies is going to be a breakthrough for hundreds of millions of people to all of a sudden join into Web3 and increase the value of people's lives through blockchain technology in one way or another. So I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. I thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, Kadan, and great insights into the industry. And thank you for being focused on security. I think it's very important, especially for people that are just getting into the industry. You know, it's horrible to join FTX a week before all of a sudden you lose all your funds. And same thing with decentralized exchanges. That notion that, yeah, it's decentralized and I'm holding my funds is great, but it doesn't mean that's 100% safe. But as long as you're cautious and, you know, do the best you can. So all the best with these updates that you mentioned about the roadmap with Komodo coming out. I'm going to leave the links for that and just the Komodo platform in the description box below as well. And all the best moving forward. And let's follow up in the near future.
Thank you so much, Ashton. It was a pleasure. Thanks a lot.